right, I was going to probably make another shit post until about yesterday. If you'd like to know the reason, all of a sudden, while I was being myself casually telling my workers to work more, I got a notification from a comment what seemed to be a certain somebody. Yeah, someone appearing to be Seeker commented. Sure, this is likely not his real account and likely just a fan of his, but in the case that the sub count is legitimate and this is, in fact, the real Seeker I'm going to have to explain to you why his comment could possibly mean what I think it means. You see, before we can understand what Ikaruga is, we must first go back to before the agricultural revolution. Believe it or not, Yomi, or the spirit of Yomi, existed for as long as humans can remember, although never actually seen by them. They were guided to hunt and gather in equal manners, and the chief held his position by respect rather than force. It sounds great, and it was great, until the idea of farming came about by a brilliant man, specifically in China. Yomi was happy with their accomplishments at first, that they were able to have more food with less work, but with the new kinds of tools, artistry, and inventions that came out, it created a clear shift in thought. Now women were being treated as lesser than men, peasants were lower than those who lived in the cities, and social hierarchy was invented. And that's how the spirit of Ikaruga was essentially birthed. By no means is she the antichrist of any of Yomi's principles, nor evil by any means. Ikaruga brought many reform to make the lives of people better in the state, and the horrid effects of the time were mostly due to her inexperience. Yomi was simply displeased that her generosity, at the time, spawned an entirely new god that simply could not hold people together. If you were to put the two on a spectrum at this point in time, it'd be rather simplistic, where Yomi is the furthest left, and Ikaruga is in the middle of the right. Yomi had nothing against Ikaruga either, until Ikaruga, who decided to check on a larger, more inland village, didn't notice that the Chinese had effectively enslaved thousands of people. That resulted into what most people call the alt-right goddess, Ryabi, to be born into the world in modern day Tibet. Now she is the exact opposite of Yomi's ideals, taking some of Ikaruga's ideas, and rooting them within hatred and prejudice towards certain peoples. She spread her influence to Mesopotamia, and was brutally harsh on them. This effectively led to everyone in Asia Minor and Mediterranean Europe picking up their ways, and went on to seize North Africa at some point. You remember that the creation of each goddess went in a circle, right? That was the case when the Roman Republic came into existence. Ryabi became increasingly fasciated with this one country, until she completely left Tibet altogether, and made her capital Rome itself. No one knew she was Jupiter, king of the gods back then. So, one day she looked at France, and wondered if she could get her hands on it. So, she managed to convince the government that governing overland territories could work out for them, and off they went. It was hard at first, but a Keanu Reeves in the form of Gaius Julius led the final push to take what was then Gaul. Little did she know, he was effectively a Yomi extremist looking to stop Ryabi's reign of terror and misguided racism, so he fought the system, and actively made the people love him. Ryabi, enraged, told the senators to invite him in and kill him. However, neither Yomi, limited to the steppe peoples and Americas, nor Ryabi nor Julius had an FU, and when he came into power, that ended both Yomi's plan to free the people, and Ryabi's plan to have absolute power. Instead, Augustus, although he still believed in Roman traditions, unknowingly birthed what all the goddess did not want. A goddess that usurps freedom from people. You may know her as Ikaruga, and she's the complete polar opposite of Ikaruga. However, Ikaruga was so busy attending to China and Japan during both warring states periods, that she needed any help she could get, thereby allying herself with Ikaruga, and Ryabi, without any real want to do anything, sat from the sidelines. Eventually, Ikaruga's land stabilized, and became remarkable centers of trade and culture, unfortunately at the behest of many fellow women. Yomi then entirely cared for the hunter-gatherers and nomads. However, Europe basically was divided between two deities that did not like each other, hence why the constant political turmoil that ensued all the way until suddenly Ikaruga's Islamic movement took over North Africa, Spain, and even Ryabi's new favorite capital, Constantinople. You may be wondering how Yomi was doing, and believe it or not, her steppe people and natives had good lives and arguably were doing brilliantly, until some people were giving blood sacrifices to her. That gave the Spanish, now led by Ikaruga, a reason to unleash their STDs and slavery on the local population. Ever since then, Yomi's lands became less and less until the writing of the Communist Manifesto, where Yomi had only a few islands, and the Amazon. Eventually communism spread nearly everywhere, but at this point, the entirety of the New World and the East were governed by Ikaruga in some way. Hence Yomi would know in what the hell is going on to deserve getting her land back, and Ikaruga said something along the lines of,
"Nothing personal while NISENPA